Large-scale screening attended by all of our pals, but much of it was significant. A long time had passed since I'd attended an opening for my own work. Richard Gere, a star whose charisma, skill, and iconic performances previously captivated audiences in Hollywood. He was more than simply a movie star. He was a beautiful woman, an officer, and a gentleman. He became famous all around the world. Outside of the spotlight, his private life was just as interesting as his professional life. But beneath the glitz and splendor, he had hardships, tragedies, and life-altering experiences. At 76 years old, his life has changed drastically from what people recall. When he does make an appearance in public, it's hard to notice the transformation. Come along as we examine his life's trajectory and current state in further detail. Background and formal schooling. Richard Gere came into this world on August 31st, 1949, in the city of Philadelphia. Doris and Gere was a housewife, and her husband, Homer George Gere, was an insurance agent. He was the second of their 3 children and the first son. Richard was brought up in a Methodist household. His father had aspirations of becoming a minister. Richard was born and raised in Syracuse, New York, after his family relocated there. A lineage that dated back hundreds of years was part of his family tree. Even the family name, Gere, had been changed to Gere by his paternal great-grandfather. Richard could find Mayflower ancestry on both his paternal and maternal sides. He was personally related to the Pilgrims through his family tree, which included William Brewster, Francis Cook, and Richard Warren. Richard always had a creative side, even as a kid, where he earned his diploma in 1967 from North Syracuse Central High School. In addition to being an athlete and musician, he was a student. As a gymnast, he was also a talented trumpet player. He attended UMass Amherst on a gymnastics scholarship thanks to his exceptional talent. Studying philosophy there brought out a different part of his inquisitive nature. However, Richard made a decision that would alter the course of his life irrevocably after 2 years. He did not get graduation from college. Neither gymnastics nor philosophy were going to be his future. Something very different was being drawn to him by it. The acting world, with all its potential and challenges, was shortly to be his destination along that road. Get your star on the Hollywood sign. In the middle of the 1970s, Richard made his film debut. When he joined the Lords of Flatbush in 1974, he got his big break. Unfortunately, the plans fell through. Richard was substituted in the film following an altercation with Sylvester Stallone. But obstacles like this simply served to strengthen his resolve. In 1977, he made a brief appearance in Looking for Mr. Goodbar, a performance that garnered him considerable notoriety. After that, Terrence Malick's 1978 film Days of Heaven followed. The picture was well received, and Richard's career took off from there. The 1980 film American Gigolo marked the true turning point. He became famous all around the globe thanks to that film, and his magnetic screen presence captivated audiences everywhere. He co-starred with Deborah Winger in 1982, barely 2 years after that, in the film An Officer and a Gentleman. The picture received 6 Oscar nominations and made almost $130 million at the box office. Although Richard's career was filled with highs and lows, it was solidified when he won his first Golden Globe nomination. He had a tumultuous run in the film industry for the remainder of the 1980s. Afterwards, he was once again a household name in the 1990s. In 1990, we had blockbuster hits like Pretty Woman and Internal Affairs. His role in Pretty Woman, which starred Julia Roberts, earned him another nomination for a Golden Globe. His success grew much more over that decade. Summersby, 1993, Primal Fear, 1996, and Runaway Bride, 1999, in which he acted alongside Julia Roberts again, were all starring roles for him. He even put his Irish accent to use in 1997's The Jackal, when he played an IRA militant. People magazine had already crowned him the sexiest man alive by 1999. In the same year, he had starring roles in 3 successful films: Chicago, Unfaithful, and The Mothman Prophecies. A Golden Globe was his for his work in Chicago. And further high point for Richard came in the early 2000s, when he demonstrated his adaptability by starring in Shall We Dance, a film about ballroom dancing. During the year 2004, worldwide, that picture made $170 million. But no amount of success in Hollywood lasts forever, and Richard would soon encounter fresh challenges in his personal and professional life. Professional and critical acclaim in due course. Different paths were taken by Richard's ventures following Shall We Dance. In 2005, he directed B Season, which bombed at the box office. Richard, however, persisted in his career and starred as a Bosnian war correspondent in 2007's The Hunting Party. He co-starred with Heath Ledger and Christian Bale in that year's I'm Not There. Another 2008 love drama, in which he co-starred with Diane Lane, was Nights in Rodanthe. It was one of the worst pictures of the year according to reviewers, although it nevertheless managed to earn over $84 million globally. To add insult to injury, Richard had never before worked on a film that had been fully produced by a big Hollywood studio before that production. It was only after that he explained why. Richard said that the Hollywood establishment did not accept him because of his political beliefs, particularly those concerning China. The Chinese market was crucial to many studios, and he lost out on prospects because of his outspokenness. Richard did not go away. He shifted his focus to indie films. Some of the highest praise he has ever received came from these works. Critics couldn't help but notice his stellar performance in 2012's Arbitrage, which resulted in his 4th Golden Globe nomination. The Hamptons, Hollywood, and Cairo film festivals all presented him with Lifetime Achievement honors. Richard persisted in taking chances. His 2016 performance as a small-time fixer in Norman shocked spectators. The part exposed a new aspect of him, the one he likened to the unpleasant and needy parts of ourselves. Many critics thought his performance was riveting and deserving of an Oscar nod. In addition to his acting chops, Richard showcased his musical and dance abilities. Pretty Woman features his composition and performance of the piano piece, while Runaway Bride features his guitar solo. He trained in karate under an officer and a gentleman and picked up tap dancing for the Chicago Symphony. One thing stayed the same despite all this effort. Richard Gere was never even nominated for an Oscar. He is often hailed by critics and fans as a top actor who was deserving of that recognition, but was never given it. Many were perplexed as to how an actor of his talent and renown could experience such ups and downs in his career and personal life. The performer whose career was a complete accident. Nearly everyone is familiar with the name Richard Gere. He shot to fame after appearing in films such as Chicago, Pretty Woman, An Officer and a Gentleman, and others. He gained a legion of fans all around the globe and amassed accolades like a Golden Globe and an Emmy nomination in the process. What is remarkable, though, is that Gere never really planned out his career. "My career has been a complete mess," he confessed. "I have never planned my professional life in such a way. I just have always done what I pleased." Because of his straightforward honesty, his film choices would occasionally catch people off guard. Additionally, he mentioned that actors often feel limited by the roles that are presented to them, but he felt fortunate. In his experience, he collaborated with a remarkable group of talented filmmakers, performers, and writers. In retrospect, Gere went so far as to say, "I'm kind of amazed myself that I've been able to ride this career this long with such good people." These remarks demonstrate that success wasn't something Gere painstakingly accumulated step by step. He wrote it out with skill, chance, and just the right moment. The fact that he was thankful, however, does not imply that things were always peachy. Conflicts with co-stars and disputes behind the scenes were among the Gere-related Hollywood problems. It was not another actor, though, with whom he had his most famous public feud. The Academy Awards, one of the world's most prestigious events, were the source. At the Academy Awards, Richard Gere wasn't merely famous for his performance. Also, he did a lot of work for the issues that were important to him. He devoted a lot of his time to Tibet because he was a Buddhist. His involvement with the Tibet House dates back to 1987. And he rose through the ranks to become the organization's chairman in 1995. He advocated for the protection of Tibetan culture, the advancement of HIV/AIDS research, and the prevention of human rights violations via the Gere Foundation. Given his interests, it was natural for Gere to want to do more with his popularity. In 1993, the very thing took place. Gere accepted the trophy for Best Art Direction as he made his Oscars debut. When he got to the microphone, though, he deviated from the script. On the contrary, he spoke passionately about Tibet. His account of the human rights situation under Chinese authority was absolutely horrific, and he pleaded for an end to the conflict. In an effort to persuade Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping to withdraw his forces from Tibet, he went so far as to rally the crowd to send him messages of love and rationality. People were startled not by his beliefs, but by the context in which he spoke. The Academy made very clear that the Oscars were not the place for political speeches. Gere's remarks went too far. The Academy consequently barred him from participating in any future ceremonies. Consequences were felt by others that year as well. Also barred for speaking out about the plight of Haitian refugees at the Oscars were Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon. But there was another tier to Gere's punishment. He was lifelong barred from China. That was devastating news for Hollywood actors because the Chinese market had grown into a substantial revenue generator for studios. The decision to speak up by Gere had enduring consequences. Still, the ban didn't stop him. Rather, it became a part of his narrative. Years of hiding and then coming back. Richard Gere was not seen at any Academy Awards ceremonies after 1993. Never again would he set foot on that illustrious platform. He avoided it all for 20 years. His demeanor, though, was what really stood out. He seems unfazed. Years later, he spoke to Huffist about his redemption, saying, "Apparently, I've been rehabilitated. It seems if you stay around long enough, they forget they've banned you." This was his attempt to downplay the impact of the whole ordeal on him. 20 years after his last appearance at the Oscars, he returned in 2013. However, he still said that he wasn't very excited to go back to the world of tuxedos. When asked about his absence in a 2017 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he laughed about it, saying, "I didn't have to put on a tuxedo again. I was fine with that." His shrug indicated that he was not bitter about the ban. The years away from the limelight were only a price he had to pay for standing by the speech he gave in 1993. What matters most is that he never rescinded his statements. Talking about Tibet on that stage was something he would never regret. The world regarded him differently after that decision, not merely as a Hollywood celebrity, but as someone prepared to sacrifice his fame for his beliefs. Not only did he spend years away from the Oscars because of the conflict between his activism and Hollywood's politics, but fans also saw a marked change in his career trajectory. When ticket sales stopped, once upon a time, Richard Gere was the Hollywood heartthrob. Films such as American Gigolo, 1980, An Officer and a Gentleman, 1982, and Pretty Woman, 1990, catapulted him to stardom. Subsequently, his 2002 Chicago performance demonstrated that he was more than simply a romantic lead. Even in musicals, he might be a star. He enjoyed a fruitful and eventful career for a long time. He was adored by audiences. Studios banked on his name recognition to boost ticket sales, and critics gave him high marks. Many of his admirers were unaware of a fascinating anecdote he had. He goes by Tiffany as a middle name. A lot has changed from his early decades, when he had a plethora of roles. Gere went dark for 4 years after starring in the 2019 miniseries Mother, Father, Son. He made a modest return with the 2023 film Maybe I Do, but it was difficult to disregard the emptiness that followed. Fears that Hollywood had abandoned him began to circulate. As time went on, it became apparent that Gere's disappearance had more to do with something other than aging. For the reason that, despite a string of successful films in his early years, his later work painted a drastically different picture. Every actor has flops in their filmography. Much of Richard Gere's subsequent work, however, was unsuccessful, making Dr. Tay and the Women in 2000 cost $23 million, yet he barely made back the money. In 2009, he was the lead in the critically and commercially unsuccessful film Amelia, which had a budget of $40 million but only managed to earn $14.2 million. His thriller The Double, which he directed 2 years later, cost nearly 3 times as much to create but only made $4.7 million worldwide. Despite being adapted from a Nicholas Sparks novel, 2008's Even Nights in Rodin failed to live up to the expectations of Sparks's previous feature films. While $84 million may sound like a lot, it was actually somewhat underwhelming when compared to other films in the same genre. The figures were already low when 2017 rolled around. He co-starred with Laura Linney and Steve Coogan in The Dinner, which only earned $2.5 million globally. In the same year, the performer who used to draw huge audiences to the movies only made around $40,000 from Three Christs. There had been a dramatic shift. Yes, Gere had previously starred in blockbuster films. 3 films, Pretty Woman, Runaway Bride, and The Jackal, racked up $149 million. His latest pictures, however, were no longer drawing in large crowds. As a result, many began to question whether he had reached the end of his Hollywood career. The number of tickets sold was just half the tale, but his professional decisions showed much more. Staying focused on the silver screen. Richard Gere's decision to focus nearly solely on films is one possible explanation for his decline in Hollywood. As online video services like HBO Go, Netflix, and Prime Video started to rule the ratings and industry awards, many of his contemporaries made the transition to television. That was a path that G seldom took, though. Unless you count documentaries and the 2019 miniseries Mother, Father, Son, he avoided television. Because of this, he had fewer chances to reach out to new demographics. It also prevented him from participating in the major television productions that helped launch the careers of actors his age. Notwithstanding his theatrical roots, Gere never returned to the stage. His performance in Bent and other 1970s plays garnered him much acclaim. After all these years, he still managed to pull off musicals with his performance in Chicago. In contrast to other performers, Gere decided to take a break from Broadway and live engagements. He had less opportunities to shine without supporting parts on TV and in the theater. His career seemed even more subdued because of this lack of variety. even though he saw those around him consistently succeeding by adjusting to new forms. Even though Gere shied away from some routes, he certainly wasn't doing nothing. His attention had moved on to a world outside of Hollywood, away from scripts and red carpets. Richard Gere's devotion to Buddhism and humanitarian issues has been well known for quite some time. He has devoted decades of his life to serving nonprofits and charities, including co-founding Tibet House. Campaigns to raise awareness of AIDS, educate the public, and safeguard indigenous populations are all part of his remit. Gere discussed the impact of his religion on his life in an interview he gave to Lion's Roar in 1999. According to him, "I find that more and more my involvement in a career in a normal householder life is a great challenge for deepening the teachings inside of me." He went on to explain that he wouldn't have to face the hardships and obstacles that shaped him if he weren't involved in the realm of work and family. Being in the marketplace, as he put it, was an integral aspect of his spiritual journey. From that vantage point, it was obvious that his own principles were paramount. He was always interested in more than just film work. Even less of an emphasis was placed on it as time progressed. He demonstrated that helping others was central to his life through his involvement with groups like Doctors Without Borders and Amnesty International. Because of that, he wasn't always accessible to Hollywood. Additionally, there were instances when the industry's emphasis on profits and box office figures ran counter to his fervent campaigning. Fans clung to a glimmer of hope even when his career leveled down. Perhaps we may see Julia Roberts again. Unfortunately, not even that aspiration remained long. An iconic duet comes to a close. Richard Gere and Julia Roberts' collaboration produced two critically acclaimed Hollywood features. The 1990 film Pretty Woman became an instant classic and financial success. Runaway Bride, which they did together in 1999, was also a commercial success. Fans were ecstatic by their connection and had high hopes for future collaborations, but a third film never materialized. As part of her conversation with Gayle King, Julia Roberts delivered the decisive statement. Her response was bittersweet when asked about the fate of their Pretty Woman characters. According to her, Gere's Edward probably had a heart attack and died happily in his sleep, while her character Vivian continued to operate his business. The possibility of another reunion was even broached by Gere himself. According to his statement to US Weekly, "We have done two movies and they were both successful, so maybe we should just let it go at that." This statement clearly indicated that the magic of their cooperation was limited to those two films. It was heartbreaking for fans who had hoped for a reunion. On the other hand, Gere was focused on progress. Because of it, the once unstoppable icon of Hollywood romance is now experiencing a whole different narrative. One that is molded by peaceful years, individual decisions, and concentration far from the limelight of Hollywood. A name that was synonymous with his renown. Despite his reputation, Richard Gere remained one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. The British discussion show Aspel and Company featured him in 1989. Gere took offense to being referred to as a sex symbol by host Michael Aspel. After the interview, Aspel recalled, "We had a phone call from his agent saying if I didn't remove the sex symbol thing, they were going to take it up with their lawyer. He would not be known as a sex symbol." Aspel admitted he found the reaction odd. He explained he took himself very seriously because he did a lot of stuff for the people of Tibet. This moment showed how different Gere was from the image the media created for him. While the world saw him as a romantic star, he wanted to be known for deeper causes. But this seriousness added to the idea that he wasn't always easy to work with. Hollywood values image, and sometimes an actor's personal approach shapes the roles they're offered. For Gere, his seriousness became part of his story. And as his career slowed, the world began to see more of his private life than his screen roles. Life at home during the pandemic. Richard Gere's career slowed even more after 2019. But this wasn't just about Hollywood. Like many people, the pandemic changed his life. After starring in the BBC miniseries Mother, Father, Son, he didn't appear in anything for 4 years. The reason was simple. He chose to stay home with his family. Speaking to Sky News in 2023, Gere explained, "I just stayed at home with my family. To be honest, I was terrified of having to learn all the rules and regulations that were in place for filmmaking around that time." He prioritized spending time with his family, including his wife Alejandra Silva and their children, above spending months on set under stringent restrictions. He was patient, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. After security was loosened, he made a triumphant return with the movie Maybe I Do. Gere announced his return. Thus, it relaxed somewhat, and the script was audible. "I figured this would be a great opportunity to ease back into the workforce with an adult-oriented project starring actors I was already familiar with and trusted." Notable actors such as William H. Macy, Susan Sarandon, Emma Roberts, and Diane Keaton were part of the film's cast. It was the ideal method to return to Gere after a long absence. Although he remained at home due to the epidemic, he was also burdened by a distinct obstacle, one that continued for over 10 years. Since Gere had a case that followed him to court even when he wasn't in front of the cameras, the matter went on for 15 years in court. Richard Gere went to India in 2007 with Bollywood actress Shilpa Shetty for a public appearance. Gere planted multiple pecks on Shetty's cheeks while they were all together. An innocent act of consciousness sparked a firestorm of criticism. Gere was granted an arrest warrant by the Supreme Court of India over allegations of obscenity. Long after the incident had passed, the case continued to make news due to its protracted nature. Gere clarified that his goal was to bring attention to HIV/AIDS by demonstrating that sharing a kiss does not transmit the virus. Nonetheless, the Indian judicial system hung on to the case for nearly 16 years. The allegations against Shetty were finally dismissed in April 2023 by the court. After all those years, the case finally came to a close with the court saying, "A woman being groped on the street or touched on a public way or in public transport cannot be termed as accused or participative to an extent of mental culpability, and she cannot be held for illegal omission to make her liable for prosecution." It did, however, demonstrate how one embarrassing incident may cast a pall over an otherwise successful career. Gere was consumed by self-doubt as he grappled with legal challenges overseas. Because he was old, insecure, health-conscious, and unsure of himself when he returned to acting after a long hiatus. In 2023, Richard Gere made a triumphant return to acting, but he was candid about his uncertainty about his abilities. "Whenever I start a project, I kind of question whether I know what I'm doing at all. And after 3 years of not making a film or working in the theater, I think I had this feeling of, do I know how to do this? Did I ever know how to do this?" Gere confessed to Sky News, echoing the feelings of many who returned to work after long breaks during the pandemic. However, he recovered swiftly. He was forthright in his comparison of acting to riding a bike, stating, "You pretty much remember how to do it." This demonstrated that even celebrities had challenges with self-confidence, particularly following a period of distance. At roughly the same time, Gere was also dealing with health issues. He contracted pneumonia and spent some time in the hospital in early 2023 while on a family vacation to Mexico. His health had been declining prior to the journey, and it only got worse while he was away. After spending the night in the hospital and receiving antibiotics, he was discharged. Alejandra, his wife, posted Instagram updates in which she said, "Richard is feeling much better. We are all feeling much better, almost back to normal." She went on to explain that the family had been sick with various ailments, but had managed to get well. All eyes were on Gere after his health problems made it clear he had outgrown his role as a youthful star in the 80s and 90s. He was 74 years old in 2023, having been born in 1949. Gere is already in his 70s and is juggling the responsibilities of a new family with the birth of 2 young sons, Alexander in 2019 and another on the way in 2020. Speaking about it, he said, "I have a 2.5-year-old and a 3.5, almost 4-year-old and a 10-year-old, so I don't have really the luxury of thinking about time or getting older." Still, he has faced the reality of age with acceptance. Getting older is inevitable, he admitted. "I mean, it would be silly for people not to engage with it, and even early on to just think about it," showing his calm outlook, he added. "But I get at best a finite number of years, and it might be a lot shorter based on health and accidents and all kinds of other things, so it certainly is inevitable." These words reveal a man who has seen fame, faced challenges, but now lives with awareness of both his age and his blessings. Richard Gere is not finished yet, but while he's working on building his career again, his personal life has also faced ups and downs with both love and controversy shaping his later years. Family challenges and controversy. In September 2025, Richard Gere celebrated his 76th birthday. His wife, Alejandra Silva, marked the day with a heartfelt Instagram post. She described him as their family's rock, adding, "This year has brought changes and challenges, but through it all, you've been the constant, our rock." She thanked him for the love and patience he gives to their 2 young sons, saying, "You are everything to us, the best husband and the best dad." Alongside her words, she shared photos of Gere with their children, including one where he wore a crown on his head with the caption, "King for a day." It painted a picture of a man who may be older, but still deeply loved at home. Yet, the birthday came during a time of public criticism. Gere had recently sold a historic mansion in Connecticut for $10.75 million to a developer. That home, once owned by singer Paul Simon, was torn down to make room for a new subdivision. The decision sparked outrage, especially from Simon's daughter Lulu. On social media, she wrote. Just in case anyone was wondering if I still hate Richard Gere, I do. She accused him of breaking his promise to protect the land and posted a warning that she hoped her dead pets buried in that backyard would haunt him. The posts were later deleted, but the damage was done. While the demolition upset many, salvage experts did manage to save key pieces of the house from stone steps to a full oak library. Still, the loss of the mansion left fans and locals angry. Through it all, Gere and Alejandra stayed quiet, focusing instead on their family and their new life in Spain. Alejandra later explained that their move was meant to bring them closer to her family, but that they would still return often to the US for this new chapter means balancing a European home with his American roots. Just another change in a life already filled with twists. Do you think Richard Gere will make a strong comeback in Hollywood with these new projects? Or is his focus now more on family life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories. Thanks for watching.